What happens when a group of arrogant bikers walks into a quiet Montana diner looking for trouble and instead finds themselves face to face with one of the deadliest Navy SEALs in American history? This is not just another action story or a Hollywood movie plot. This is a gripping tale of underestimation, bravery, and quiet power that will leave you questioning appearances and redefining who you think the most dangerous person in the room really is. Stay with us because as this story unfolds, you'll see how small decisions made in seconds can dismantle entire criminal empires, reveal billion-dollar weapon smuggling operations, and remind us all that true strength often hides behind calm eyes and a steaming cup of coffee. Our story begins in Murphy's Diner, a dusty little eatery on the edge of a quiet Montana town that hardly ever made the news or gave anyone reason to glance twice. The diner was the kind of place where locals gathered to complain about gas prices and discuss who won the Friday night fishing tournament, the kind of place where quiet folks went to sip coffee without being disturbed. On this particular afternoon, the sun was casting long shadows across the cracked pavement outside the diner as Alexandra Winters sat at her usual corner booth, staring into the curling steam of her coffee cup. To anyone else, she looked like a weary traveler, perhaps a loner passing through with quiet thoughts. But those appearances were dangerously misleading. What no one in the room realized, not the waitress, not the cook flipping burgers in the back, not even Emma Murphy, who owned the place, was that Alexandra Winters was no ordinary customer. She was a retired Navy SEAL commander with 15 years of elite combat experience operations, so classified that even law enforcement would never get clearance to hear them. I want to pause here because it's important to understand something crucial. People like Alexandra don't broadcast their past. They don't wear shirts that say SEAL Team 6 or let their military tattoos do the talking. Instead, they blend in, quiet, watchful, like apex predators waiting for the wrong fool to make the wrong move. And on this quiet day, the wrong fools did exactly that. The rumble of three motorcycles shattered the peaceful afternoon. Big, loud bikes, the kind meant to announce themselves, roared into the parking lot outside Murphy's Diner. Their engines rattled the glass windows and silenced the gentle clink of silverware inside the room. I've seen this myself in small towns. There's always that moment when a certain type of gang rolls into town and everything gets uncomfortably still. Conversations die mid-sentence, forks hover halfway to mouths, and everyone waits to see what kind of trouble just rolled in. The door swung open and in walked James "Snake" Davidson, flanked by two of his crew. Snake was the kind of man whose nickname was earned, not given. Scarred face, dead eyes, confidence built on years of intimidation and violence. His crew wasn't much better, a wiry man called Viper, who always carried a knife in his boot and tanked a mountain of a man with more muscles than brains and a poorly concealed pistol under his leather vest. Now let's pause to reflect on what was really happening here. Snake and his boys didn't just stop for lunch. They came into Murphy's Diner to send a message to remind everyone who ran this town to squeeze Emma Murphy and the locals into paying their protection fees and falling in line. This is the classic tactic of fear-based control, seen not just in movies but in real-life towns across America, where criminal gangs exploit small communities too scared to fight back. And yet this time, they had no idea they were picking the wrong target. As Snake swaggered to the counter and laid his hand down hard beside Emma's shaking coffee pot, Alexandra watched silently. She didn't flinch. She didn't frown. She didn't even reach for her wallet. Instead, her SEAL-trained mind was cataloging every detail: the knife in Viper's boot, the awkward bulge of Tank's pistol, the way Snake's right wrist flexed when he leaned forward. That's what separates trained warriors from everyone else. They see the threat before it moves. In the next few moments, Snake leaned close to Emma and began his usual bullying routine, demanding to know why she skipped the mayor's mandatory town meeting, dropping hints about consequences for disobedience, slapping the counter to make her jump. But something unexpected happened. Emma, perhaps tired of years of being pushed, gave a small, brave reply that maybe the mayor should focus on running the town instead of letting crooks like Snake dictate policy. The room froze. Snake's fake smile faded into anger, too. He reached across the counter toward Emma, and that was his fatal mistake. Before anyone could blink, Alexandra's hand shot out, seized Snake's wrist, and twisted it in a way only military combat training could teach: pressure applied perfectly to a nerve cluster, forcing his fingers open like a dropped weapon. The entire diner watched in stunned silence. No one moved, no one spoke. Snake tried to yank his arm free, but Alexandra's grip was iron. Viper and Tank shifted, preparing to jump her, but her voice cut through the room like steel. "Stay where you are," she said softly, "or you'll leave here in an ambulance." And you know what they believed her, because in that moment they saw what Snake finally realized. The quiet woman with tired eyes was a killer. Not a street brawler, not a drunk vet, a trained government-forged weapon that could break bones as easily as cracking her knuckles. This part of the story makes me think of another real incident, 2019 Kansas City, where a retired female Marine sergeant disarmed two armed robbers in a gas station using nothing but speed and leverage. Just like Alexandra, she never looked like a threat until it was too late. Back to the diner, Alex leaned in and quietly listed Snake's crimes. Protection rackets across 3 states, weapons smuggling operations, military discharge records. She knew him, every dark secret, and in that moment Snake understood the depth of his mistake. Tank's hand twitched toward his gun, but Alex's gaze pinned him. "Don't," she warned, her voice low and final. "You won't clear leather before I break your arm." A long, breathless silence. Then Snake slowly raised his free hand in surrender. "All right, we're leaving," he muttered. Alex released him, letting the man stagger backward, rubbing his wrist. The blood ravens backed away like dogs sensing the bigger predator. As they left the diner and roared away on their bikes, Emma finally spoke the question everyone was thinking. "Who are you?" And Alexandra smiled faintly. "Just someone who's seen enough bullies for one lifetime." But deep inside, she knew the truth. It wasn't over. It was just beginning. Because snakes don't let go of grudges, and this quiet town was sitting on a powder keg of smuggled weapons and federal crimes waiting to explode. As Snake and his crew disappeared down the road in a cloud of dust and engine roar, the weight of what had just happened settled into Murphy's diner, like thick fog. The regular customers slowly picked up their conversations in nervous whispers, casting glances at Alexandra, as if seeing her for the very first time. And Emma, the silver-haired owner, whose hands had trembled minutes before, brought over a fresh cup of coffee and a slice of her famous apple pie. "Whatever happens next," Emma said softly but firmly, "you're not alone." And this simple line stuck with Alexandra more than anyone realized. Because quiet, isolated warriors like her, veterans of invisible wars, often believe they are utterly alone. But sometimes community shows up in the smallest gestures. As she took a cautious sip of coffee, Alex's mind was already racing. She hadn't come to this town to fight. Quite the opposite. She chose this quiet place in Montana to leave the ghosts of Baghdad and black ops behind. But you can't outrun trouble, especially when trouble comes wearing leather cuts and carrying weapons. And Snake was right about one thing: it wasn't over. What Alex knew but hadn't yet shared with anyone in this town was that Snake's little biker gang, the Blood Ravens, weren't just a rowdy collection of bullies. They were a visible piece of a much deeper, darker operation, an illegal arms trafficking ring, running weapons across state lines, possibly international, and involving people far more dangerous than Snake or his thick-headed muscle. If her instincts were right, this quiet town was sitting atop a massive criminal pipeline, and that pipeline had just felt her poke the hive. That evening, as dusk settled like purple silk across the streets, Sheriff Tom Cooper arrived at Alexandra's small apartment above the diner. He knocked once and entered without waiting. He wasn't there for coffee. "I heard about your little run-in with Snake." Cooper began, settling heavily into the chair across from her. "Word travels fast in this town." Alex gave a faint smile, field stripping, and cleaning her Glock 19 on the kitchen table. "Old habits, ritual comfort. Just a polite chat with some rude customers," she replied. But Cooper wasn't fooled. He leaned forward, his weathered face tense. "Look, I ran a check on you when you moved here 6 months ago. 15 years seal. Commendations I can't even read because they're buried under classified orders. I know you can handle yourself." That's what worries me. This is where the real story deepens. Because the sheriff wasn't warning her for her safety, he was warning her that Snake and the Blood Ravens weren't the biggest threat in play. "Last month, my deputy found a weapons cache outside town, big enough to supply a small army," Cooper said in a low voice. "Before we could move on it, the order came down from the state level to back off. Pressure from above. Someone's greasing palms high up. Real-life example time. This actually mirrors a real ATF investigation in 2018, where a small-town gun shop in Indiana was quietly selling illegal weapons out the back door, protected by a state senator's office that killed the inquiry. Criminal corruption runs deeper than most small-town citizens ever know. Alex listened carefully. Sounds like snakes moving up the food chain. Cooper nodded grimly. Mayor Hayes holds meetings at the Blood Ravens clubhouse. Half the city council drives new cars they shouldn't be able to afford, and Cross is coming to town next week. The name hit Alex like ice water down her spine. Marcus Cross, an international arms dealer whose network stretched from Eastern Europe to the Middle East. She'd crossed paths with him once before on a mission gone horribly wrong Baghdad. Two of her teammates never made it home. Cross was a ghost, slippery, untouchable, until now. He's coming here. Alex's voice stayed calm, but her mind spun. If Cross was relocating part of his operation to this quiet town, then something massive was underway. He's expanding, Cooper said, and he's not coming alone. Ex-CIA types, private mercenaries, professionals, not snakes, beer-bellied thugs, real killers. The sheriff stood to leave but hesitated. Whatever you plan, be careful. You're good. But Cross plays for keeps. After Cooper left, Alex stared at the phone in her hand for a long moment. Then she dialed a number she hadn't used in months. Jackson speaking, came the voice on the other end. Mike, it's Winters. Remember that arms dealer who slipped past us in Baghdad silence? Then Cross. Christ, Alex. You're supposed to be retired. I need everything you can dig up. Official channels only. No backdoor ops. I don't want you burning sources. Mike sighed. Give me 48 hours. And Alex, don't do this alone. I'm not, she replied softly. And in that moment, a plan began to form. The next morning brought new tension. Alex helped Emma open the diner as a fresh group of bikers rumbled past not Blood Ravens, but the Steel Knights, a rival motorcycle club known for different reasons. Their reputation was complicated. They kept their territory clean, mostly ex-military, themselves rarely harassed civilians. But something about their leader, a giant called Iron, caught Alex's attention. As they rode by, Iron glanced at her through his visor. Recognition. Message sent. Maybe they weren't enemies. Maybe they could be more. Alex's phone buzzed a text from Mike. Data incoming. Cross confirmed. Body count higher than snakes by miles. Also, Steel Knights might be useful. Enemy of your enemy. Interesting. Very interesting. Later that day, Deputy Sarah Martinez came into the diner moving fast. She sat across from Alex and quietly slid an envelope across the table. Inside, grainy surveillance photos of the Blood Ravens moving military-grade weapons down the highway. Not their usual biker bravado. No, this was armored trucks, tactical escorts, professional drivers. This wasn't petty crime. This was war prep. They know someone's watching, Sarah whispered. They've got eyes on this place. On you. Alex glanced at the street. Sure enough, two Blood Ravens sat in a black SUV pretending to check their phones. Watching the diner. Watching her. Your boss know you're showing me this. Sarah shrugged. Cooper's a good man, but he's scared. Me, I'm tired of watching my town get sold to scum. Emma's been like family. I've got her back. I've got yours too. Brave. Too brave maybe, but potentially another ally. Just then the Steel Knights returned, this time pulling into the diner's lot. Iron dismounted, massive and silent, filling the doorway like a black storm cloud. Mind if we join you? He asked, his voice deep as thunder. Alex gave a small nod. Sarah tensed, but Iron slid into the booth without threat. His men too. What followed was unexpected. We're here because Blood Ravens are moving military hardware through our territory without permission, Iron said quietly. That's a problem. We don't allow that kind of weight on our roads. Gets people killed. And, well, you're the first person who's ever stood up to Snake and lived. So we figured we should talk. It was like two wolves sniffing each other for the first time. Mutual recognition, shared instincts, old soldiers in biker leather. We've got intel, manpower. What we don't have is someone who can run an operation like this. Someone like you, Iron added. The truth hit her fast. The Steel Knights weren't just bikers. They were spec ops veterans. Rangers, Recon, maybe even Delta, hiding in plain sight as a cover club, like ghosts that never left the field. "We do this my way," Alex said. "Precise, clean, no cowboy stunts." Iron grinned. "Wouldn't have it any other way, Commander." As they left, Sarah whispered, "You sure about trusting bikers?" Alex watched Iron mount his bike confidence in every move. "No, but sometimes you work with the devil you know to take down the devil you don't, because the biggest devil, Marcus Cross, was on his way. And when he arrived, they'd have one chance to spring the trap, or die trying." As the hours ticked by, the town of Murphy's Hollow began to change, not visibly to the untrained eye, but to anyone with military experience. Like Alexandra Winters, the shift was obvious as the air before a storm. Snake and his blood ravens might have roared away from the diner, licking their wounded pride. But Alex knew they weren't retreating. They were regrouping, planning angry. Angry men with guns and no patience were always dangerous. She'd seen it in the sand-blasted streets of Fallujah, in the narrow alleys of Somalia, in whispered black ops briefings that never made the news. In her mind, this sleepy Montana town was no longer a quiet retirement spot. It had become a battlefield in waiting. But what gave Alex an edge was simple. She'd lived this kind of fight before. Snake and his boys had no idea they had just made themselves pawns in a much bigger, deadlier game. The next morning brought confirmation of everything Alex feared. A text from Mike, her old intelligence contact, lit her phone screen. "Cross confirmed. Weapons movement tracked. Multiple safe houses. Local government compromised. Steel Knights may be leverage." There it was in black and white. The town wasn't just unlucky, it was being positioned as a hub in a transcontinental arms pipeline. And Marcus Cross was about to arrive personally to secure his empire's new American fortress. What Cross didn't know was that Alex and her new ragtag team were building a trap of their own. But traps require bait and timing and allies willing to risk everything. Across town at the sheriff's office, Deputy Sarah Martinez faced her own quiet rebellion. Tom Cooper, the sheriff, had been sidelined by the mayor's sudden orders, suspended, replaced by none other than Snake's own brother as interim sheriff. It was a corruption power grab in broad daylight. No pretenses now, just raw intimidation. The town had officially been bought. "What are you going to do?" Sarah whispered into her radio, watching the black SUVs cruise slowly past her office window, the new so-called law sitting smugly inside. "Change the plan," came Alex's quiet response from Murphy's Diner. Because if the enemy thought law enforcement was crippled, they'd relax in other areas. And relaxing made them sloppy. Sloppiness got men killed. A lesson Alex learned the hard way years before, when her SEAL team lost 2 good operators to a mercenary double-cross in Baghdad, a mission tied to Cross. Some ghosts never sleep, and here they were again. Across the street, Snake's men made a show of pretending to guard the diner phones, out sunglasses on earpieces crackling. But they weren't fooling anyone, least of all Alex, who watched from the window as her mind calculated possibilities. Meanwhile, Iron and the Steel Knights were busy. Their former Special Forces training wasn't rusty. If anything, they welcomed this return to quiet war. In back alleys and empty warehouses, they tested Blood Raven's security perimeters, riding past checkpoints, counting heads, measuring response times. Psychological warfare. 101. Let the enemy believe another biker war was brewing. Distract, divide, confuse. One tactic the Steel Knights deployed reminded Alex of a 2015 DEA sting in New Mexico, where rival cartel members were manipulated into cannibalizing their own operations. False signals, decoy trucks, radio interference. The gangs shot themselves apart without ever realizing the real enemy was a third party pulling strings. And now in Murphy's Hollow, the same quiet chaos was brewing. Deputy Sarah delivered another envelope to Alex at the diner. Inside, new photos, maps, schedules. The Blood Ravens were consolidating their inventory, moving all weapons and valuable materials to 3 key storage sites outside town warehouses, disguised under fake companies. "They're scared," Sarah whispered. "They've tripled security, tank traps, armed checkpoints. But they're not trained for real defense." Perfect. The bigger the pile of valuables in one spot, the bigger the explosion when it went wrong. But this was about more than guns. Sarah hesitated. "One more thing." Snake told his guys Cross is bringing something else. A list. Names, locations. Snake said it's worth more than all the guns combined. Alex froze. A list like Echo, that mythical database, every arms dealer feared a black book of buyers' officials, dirty agents across 3 continents. If that rumor was true, this little town could become the epicenter of the largest intelligence breach since the Cold War. They needed that list, and they needed to make sure Cross never got out with it. That afternoon, Iron pulled Alex aside behind the diner. "Problem," he said quietly. "Our scouts picked up new faces at the airstrip. Eastern European guys. Former Spetsnaz maybe. Not Snake's usual crew. Cross's personal bodyguards. You were right, he's here early." The timeline shrank from a week to a day. The clock ticked louder. More troubling, Cross wasn't just visiting. Sheriff Cooper arrived with grim news. "Council's meeting tonight to cut our department's budget by 60%. Half my deputies laid off tomorrow. Sarah's name's on the list." Alex's jaw tightened. They were clearing the chessboard, removing lawful resistance. But the enemy forgot one piece. A SEAL doesn't need a badge, just opportunity, and some very angry, very trained bikers. Cooper sighed. "You're going to need cover, official or not. Give me Sarah and any deputies you trust. Roadblocks, traffic checks, enough to slow their movements and spook them." Iron grinned. "We've been buzzing their checkpoints all day. Ran 6 bikes past their warehouse fence. Snake's guys are spun tight as wire. They're expecting a gang war." "Good. Let them expect gangs." Meanwhile, the real strike team, ghost operators called in unofficially by Mike, were already moving into position like silent wraiths. Like Alex herself. The plan was simple and outlined: deadly in execution, fake chaos to draw attention west, real assault east and south to disable the nerve centers, capture Cross, secure the list, cripple the operation, free the town, one shot, no backup, just like old times. And then Emma Murphy surprised everyone. The quiet diner owner produced a weathered leather notebook. Names, dates, conversations, every dirty deal Snake made in this town. 10 years worth. Emma smiled thinly. "I may run a diner, but I listen, and people talk." Iron let out a low whistle. "Ma'am, you might be the most dangerous person here." She wasn't wrong. Information wins wars. Alex carefully flipped through the book. It was all there. Proof for federal eyes when this was over. If they lived long enough to deliver it. Meeting set for tomorrow night. Final planning. No turning back. As the town settled into nervous quiet, Alex stared out the window of Murphy's diner, watching storm clouds roll over the distant mountains. The coming battle hung heavy in the air, like Fallujah, like Mogadishu, like every shadow war where civilians prayed and soldiers bled. But this time, Alex vowed it would end differently. This time, the ghost of Baghdad would rest. She would see to that. The night before, everything changed in Murphy's Hollow was thick with tension as plans were whispered in the back room of Murphy's diner-turned-war room. Iron arrived with his top lieutenant's silent men with military eyes and biker leathers that hid quiet purpose. Sheriff Cooper slipped in through the back alley, newly stripped of his badge, but not his conscience. Sarah, his most trusted deputy, carried fresh surveillance photos that made everyone stiffen. 3 armored SUVs rolled into town this afternoon, she said flatly. Not blood ravens. Professional mercs. Ex-special forces, probably. Snake's little army is about to get a real backbone. And that, more than the weapons or corruption, made Alex pause. Cross wasn't trusting Snake's crew with the real muscle. These were contractors, hired killers, no mercy, no local ties. But the most chilling photo was last. A briefcase, handcuffed to one of Cross's guards. "That's it," Iron muttered. The list. Echo, the whispered legend of the arms world, a file containing names of buyers, politicians, CIA ghosts, cartel lords. Enough dirt to make world leaders sweat. If that list made it out of town, the war wasn't local anymore. It was global. The tension thickened when Emma appeared quiet but firm. "You'll want this." She handed Alex a flash drive. "The diner's security cameras, they catch everything. Snake Cross Mayor Hayes. Conversations they didn't think anyone heard." Cooper chuckled grimly. "Lady, you're wasted making pie." Emma only smiled. "Pie's my cover." This moment struck me hard, not just because it added to the plan, but because it reminded me of countless small towns I've visited, where the old guard, the coffee shop owner, the barber, the librarian knows far more than they ever admit. Real-life lesson: never underestimate the person quietly polishing silverware behind the counter. They probably know everything. Back to the story. With Emma's intel, the plan was refined. Phase 1. The Steel Knights raise hell at the Ravens' warehouse perimeters, baiting them west. Phase 2. Alex's ghost team hits the weapons convoy outside town, disabling transport capacity. Phase 3. Sarah and Cooper stage selective roadblocks, pulling Raven resources into pointless harassment suits. Phase 4. Alex personally infiltrates the town hall meeting, where Cross will feel safe expecting local control. He'd find anything but. But then came the twist no one predicted. Tommy, a Blood Ravens prospect barely old enough to shave, was caught snooping near Steel Knight's territory. Dragged into the meeting room, he trembled as iron loomed over him like a mountain. Alex stepped in, crouching low to his eye level. "Talk, kid, or you won't make it home." Fear poured out of him. Shipment schedules, guard rotations, compound layouts. But the real gem was this: Cross brought more than guards. Ex-SEALs, ex-CIA, pros and snakes called in extra shooters. Says they've got a dead man's switch, a file drop ready to release if things go bad. Alex's stomach tightened. That meant Cross knew this might blow up. He was prepared to burn the world on his way out. "They know someone's working against them," Tommy whispered. "They know about you." The room went silent. Then Iron spoke. "We need to move, now." And they did. The next morning broke gray and quiet. A false peace. The town square filled slowly with locals forced to attend Mayor Hayes' special announcement meeting, really a stage for Cross to solidify control. Across the rooftops, Ghost Team moved into sniper positions. In back alleys, Steel Knights adjusted earpieces and checked carbines. On street corners, Sarah and two loyal deputies stopped Blood Ravens trucks for license inspections while snapping photos of their cargo. In the diner, Emma poured coffee like nothing was wrong, her hidden camera catching every conversation. I've seen moments like this in actual operations on U.S. soil, believe it or not. 2011, Mississippi FBI and ATF intercepted a rogue private militia trying to build a dirty bomb. The locals, they knew long before the agencies arrived. And the ones who ran the gas stations, the diners, the farms, they fed the intel that stopped it. The unsung heroes, just like Emma. Noon approached. Snake strutted around the town hall, dragging that fateful briefcase, his eyes scanning for trouble but seeing nothing. Alex watched from the roof through her scope, calm breathing, slow. Ghost 1 status convoy hit. Trucks disabled. No survivors. Package secure. Steel Knights buzzing checkpoints. Ravens panicking. Perfect chaos. Sarah Cooper's got the evidence ready, waiting for your word. Phase 1, 2, 3 complete. Time for Phase 4. Then the power cut. The town hall flickered into emergency lights. Murmurs spread. Snake stiffened. Cross, seated behind the mayor's podium, frowned and whispered to his bodyguards. They started moving. Snake barked orders. Blood Ravens scrambled. And in that moment, Emma Murphy stood, straight, tall, calm as sunrise. "I have something to say," she declared. Silence swept the room. Snake sneered. "Sit down, old woman." "No," Emma said. "It's time this town heard the truth." She pulled her notebook. 10 years of deals. 10 years of bribes. Every one of you up there bought and paid for by the Ravens and Cross. Shock rippled through the crowd. Mayor Hayes paled. Cooper and Sarah stood protectively beside Emma. Ordinary citizens began rising to their feet, moving between Emma and the gang. Cross realized the danger too late. Alex gave the order. Ghost Team Phase 4. Go. Explosions echoed from the warehouses. Fires lit the horizon. Steel Knights flooded the streets, cutting off escape. In the town hall, smoke grenades shattered windows. Confusion. Panic. Gunfire. Ghost Team slipped in like shadows, muzzles flashing briefly in the haze. Cross's mercenaries dropped one by one, unable to find their invisible attackers. Snake pulled his gun but found Alex behind him. A quick strike to the knee, a disarm, and he was down. "You should have left Emma alone," Alex whispered, before knocking him cold. Cross tried to run. No escape. Cornered by Ghost Team at the rear door. briefcase still cuffed to his wrist, then his last card, a small transmitter. Dead man's switch, he hissed. I release this, echo goes global. Your secrets, your ops, all exposed. But a shot cracked the air. His hand exploded in pain. The device clattered away. Ghost 2 perfect sniper hit. Cross collapsed. Beaten. Defeated. You don't know what you've done, he gasped. Actually, I do, Alex replied, ripping the briefcase from his wrist. Mic data secure copy. Upload complete. Echo files transmitted. The world just shifted. Across town, sirens wailed as federal teams arrived. Blood ravens surrendered en masse. Mayor Hayes tried to flee only to be caught by Cooper's fist. The nightmare was over. But as Cross was dragged away in cuffs, Alex knew this was just round one. As the sun rose over Murphy's Hollow the following morning, the air was different, lighter, as if the weight of years of fear had finally lifted. The streets buzzed not with the sound of roaring blood-raven motorcycles, but with FBI vans, federal agents, and camera crews swarming the small town to record the fallout of the most significant arms trafficking bust the region had ever seen. For the first time in decades, the town felt clean, free, and awake. But Alexandra Winters wasn't celebrating in the town square or giving interviews. Instead, she sat quietly at the edge of Murphy's diner, nursing a fresh cup of black coffee, her gaze distant, thoughtful. Because when you've lived the life she had, victory isn't celebration, it's survival. Survival and preparation for the next shadow, waiting just beyond the horizon. Sheriff Cooper approached with a tired grin, the lines in his face softened for the first time in years. You did it, Commander, he said quietly, sliding into the booth across from her. But Alex shook her head slowly. We did it, Cooper, you, Emma, Sarah, Iron, the Steel Knights. Ghost team, even you and your brave little department. It took every piece to bring this house down, and that's the hard truth about real fights against corruption and power. No one wins alone. It takes courage from unexpected places like Emma, the pie-baking spy, or Sarah, the rookie deputy who broke ranks to do what was right, or Iron, the biker king hiding a soldier's heart under leather and steel. Their victory was the sum of those quiet choices made when no one was watching. Choices that shaped the outcome more than bullets or bombs ever could. Cooper nodded and slid a flash drive across the table. Copy of the Echo files sealed with federal authority, but the feds thought you deserved to see them first. Alex picked it up, turning it slowly between her fingers. This was more than evidence. This was the black book of every dirty deal, arms transaction, and betrayal from Washington to Warsaw. Names she recognized, names she hated, names she thought dead or forgotten. And right there in the middle, Marcus Cross, the man who'd cost her 2 teammates in Baghdad years ago, now cuffed, bleeding, and broken in federal custody. But she knew better than to think it was over. These networks never die completely. Like weeds, they grow back in the cracks unless the roots are torn out. What happens now? Cooper asked. Alex smiled faintly. Now the FBI cleans house, takes the mayor, the council, the Ravens, and burns every piece of this operation to the ground. But after that, the quiet will return. And so will something else. Greed, power, fear, another cross. Maybe smarter, maybe worse. And when that happens, they'll need someone who remembers how to fight. Cooper grunted. You thinking of sticking around? And here was the decision. Alexandra had avoided for months. She'd come to Murphy's Hollow to escape the war. But the war had followed her. Or maybe she had brought it. Maybe you can't outrun what you are. And in this town, broken and scared but brave, maybe she'd found a purpose again. Maybe, she said, sipping her coffee. Someone's gotta teach these folks how to keep their freedom once they've tasted it. Just then, Iron stepped into the diner, helmet under his arm, grinning. Federal boys just took Snake and Cross out of here. In chains, they'll be locked away for a long time thanks to you, Commander. But Alex shook her head. Thanks to Emma and Sarah and Cooper and you, Iron. I was just the spark. You all were the fire. Iron laughed, a deep sound. Well, if you ever get bored of flipping pancakes and fixing fences, the Steel Knights could use someone like you. Full patch. And for the first time, Alex grinned fully. I'll think about it. Because somewhere deep in her chest, the fire of battle, the purpose of protecting the weak still, burned, and maybe this quiet town could become her next mission. Sarah walked in, then her badge back on her belt, her smile confident as she poured herself coffee and leaned on the counter. We make a good team, don't we? Alex nodded. The best in this moment was real. No guns, no enemies, no fear. Just survivors finally breathing again. And that brings me to the real lesson of this story. Not just for towns like Murphy's Hollow, but for every one of us watching when trouble comes, when corruption grows, when fear whispers that resistance is hopeless. Remember the quiet strength sitting in the corner, the overlooked warrior, the underestimated soul, because sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the loudest or the biggest. It's the one who waits, watches, and strikes only when the moment is right. Like Alexandra Winters, former Navy SEAL now, maybe the quiet guardian of a town that learned to fight back the hard way, and maybe that's the greatest victory of all, not the battle won, but the courage awakened in those who thought they were powerless. This story is not fantasy versions of this play out in real life, far more often than we hear on the news. Small communities quietly banding together to drive out gangs, cartels, and corruption from rural counties in Texas to forgotten factory towns in Ohio. It's not the FBI or SWAT that saves them. It's the grandmothers keeping records, the teachers passing messages, the mechanics and farmers who say no more. And that is the takeaway. The lesson to hold that strength isn't measured by uniform or title. It's measured by will, by conscience, by ordinary people deciding to become extraordinary when the moment demands it. Alexandra Winters didn't come to Murphy's Hollow to be a hero. She came to disappear. But fate had other plans, and maybe that's what all of us are called to do, in small ways, in quiet moments, to be the spark that ignites a fire of change, one town, one voice, one choice at a time. So when the next bully rolls into your life, remember this story. Remember Emma, the diner keeper, Sarah, the deputy Cooper, the sheriff, Iron, the secret soldier, and Alex, the quiet SEAL, who reminded them all that courage is the most dangerous weapon of all, and that no one, not even a gang of violent bikers messing with the wrong woman, can stand against it for long.